The Shattered Vessel Inn, a small village nestled between rolling hills and whispering forests. There lived a young potter named Elian. His hands, though calloused and scarred from years of molding clay, moved with a grace that seemed to defy the roughness of his craft. Elian was known throughout the village for his creations, pots and vases that gleamed with flawless symmetry, their surfaces polished to perfection. Each piece was a testament to his skill, a reflection of the ideals he held dear: beauty, precision, and order. To Elian, a pot was not just a vessel. It was a story, a fragment of his soul shaped into form. Yet deep within, Elian carried a secret weight, a belief that gnawed at his spirit. Anything less than perfect was unworthy. This belief drove him to discard any piece that bore even the slightest crack or blemish, tossing them into a forgotten pile behind his workshop. Elian's life was one of quiet routine. Each morning, as the sun painted the sky in hues of gold and rose, he would rise, stoke the fire in his kiln, and begin his work. The village revered him, not just for his craft, but for the aura of determination that seemed to radiate from him. Mothers pointed to him as an example for their children, whispering of his discipline and talent. Yet no one saw the moments when Elian sat alone at night staring at the stars, wrestling with a restlessness he could not name. He felt a hollowness, a sense that his pursuit of perfection was a chain rather than a crown. But he pushed the feeling aside, burying it beneath the rhythm of his work. One spring morning, as the village buzzed with preparations for the annual harvest festival, Elian set out to create his masterpiece, a grand pot to be displayed at the festival's center, a symbol of the village's prosperity. He chose the finest clay, sifted and smoothed until it felt like silk beneath his fingers. For days he poured his heart into the pot, shaping its curves with meticulous care, envisioning a vessel so perfect it would silence the whispers of doubt in his mind. The village watched in anticipation, their excitement fueling his resolve. Night after night he worked by the glow of his lantern, refining every detail, ensuring no flaw marred its surface. By the eve of the festival, the pot was complete, a towering creation with elegant lines and a glaze that shimmered like liquid moonlight. The morning of the festival dawned bright and warm, the air alive with the scent of blooming flowers and freshly baked bread. Elian carried his pot to the village square, his chest swelling with pride as onlookers gasped and murmured in awe. The pot stood proudly on its pedestal, catching the sunlight in a way that made it seem almost alive. For a moment, Elian felt whole, as if he had finally crafted something worthy of his ideals. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. As the festival reached its peak, a sudden gust of wind swept through the square, fierce and unexpected. It caught the edge of a nearby canopy, sending it flapping wildly. Before anyone could react, the canopy's pole tipped, crashing into Elian's pot. The sound of shattering clay echoed like a thunderclap, silencing the crowd. Elian stood frozen, his heart plummeting as he watched his masterpiece fracture into jagged pieces. The villagers gasped, their eyes darting between the broken pot and the young potter whose face had drained of color. The perfect vessel, the symbol of his skill and dedication, lay in ruins. Shame washed over him, hot and suffocating. He wanted to disappear, to erase himself from the pitying gazes that surrounded him. Without a word, he turned and fled, leaving the shattered remnants behind. Back in his workshop, he collapsed onto the floor, his hands trembling as he stared at the pile of discarded pots in the corner, each one a reminder of his failures, now joined by the greatest failure of all. As night fell, Elian sat in the darkness, the weight of the day pressing down on him. The festival continued outside, its music and laughter a cruel contrast to the storm raging within him. He felt broken, like the pot he had poured his soul into. Perfection had been his guiding star, but now it seemed unreachable, a cruel illusion that mocked his every effort. Yet as he sat there, something stirred within him, a faint, unfamiliar whisper. It was not a voice of defeat, but of curiosity, urging him to look at the broken pieces differently. He pushed it away, unwilling to listen, but the seed had been planted. Exhausted, he closed his eyes, unaware that the dawn would bring a new perspective, one that would begin to reshape his understanding of beauty and worth. The night stretched on, and the village slept, but Elian's heart remained restless, poised on the edge of a transformation he could not yet see. The art of mending. The days following the festival were a blur of silence for Elian. The village, once alive with admiration for his work, now whispered of his failure. He avoided the square, the marketplace, the eyes of those who had seen his perfect pot reduced to fragments. His workshop, once a sanctuary, felt like a prison. The kiln stood cold, the clay untouched. Elian's hands, so accustomed to shaping and creating, now lay idle, as if they too had lost their purpose. The pile of discarded pots in the corner seemed to mock him, each crack and chip a mirror to his own perceived flaws. He could not bring himself to touch them, nor could he face the shattered remains of his festival masterpiece, which he had hastily gathered and hidden in a burlap sack. Yet, life in the village moved forward as it always did. The harvest festival faded into memory, replaced by the rhythm of daily tasks. Elian, however, remained trapped in his own mind, wrestling with the belief that his worth was tied to his ability to create perfection. The hollowness he had felt before now grew into a chasm, threatening to swallow him whole. He spent hours staring at the stars, searching for answers in their distant light, but found only questions. Why had he poured so much into a single pot? Why did its destruction feel like the end of his world? The answers eluded him, but the whisper from that fateful night lingered, growing louder with each passing day. One morning, driven by a restless urge he could not ignore, Elian ventured into the forest that bordered the village. The air was crisp, the leaves a tapestry of amber and crimson. He wandered aimlessly, his feet crunching against the earth, until he stumbled upon a small clearing where an old woman sat, her hands busy with a peculiar task. She was piecing together broken pottery, using delicate threads of gold to mend the cracks. The pots, though scarred, glowed with a beauty that stopped Elian in his tracks. Each fracture was not hidden but highlighted, transformed into a shimmering vein that told a story of resilience. The old woman, sensing his presence, looked up but said nothing, her eyes kind yet piercing. Elian felt exposed, as if she could see the cracks within him. He returned to his workshop that evening. The image of the mended pots burned into his mind. For the first time in weeks, he opened the burlap sack containing the fragments of his festival pot. His hands trembled as he laid the pieces out, each one a painful reminder of his loss. But as he studied them, the whisper in his heart grew into a voice, urging him to see not destruction but possibility. Hesitant at first, he began to experiment, using techniques he had never considered before. He mixed a lacquer with flecks of gold, inspired by the old woman's work, and carefully began to piece the pot together. The process was slow, each fragment requiring patience and precision, but with every join, Elian felt a shift within himself. Days turned into weeks as he worked, not just on the festival pot but on the discarded pieces from his pile of failures. He mended cracks with gold, polished rough edges, and embraced imperfections he had once deemed unworthy. The workshop, once silent, hummed with a new energy. Elian began to see his creations not as objects to be perfected but as stories to be told, each crack a chapter, each mend a triumph. The village noticed his absence less and less, assuming he had retreated into shame. But Elian was not hiding. He was rebuilding, not just his pots but himself. As winter approached, Elian's workshop was filled with mended vessels, each one unique, each one radiant with its golden scars. He felt a spark of pride, not the pride of perfection, but the pride of creation born from resilience. The village's annual winter market was approaching, a smaller but cherished event where artisans displayed their wares. Elian hesitated, unsure if he was ready to face the world again, but the voice within him, now strong and clear, urged him forward. He gathered his mended pots, including the festival piece, and prepared to step back into the light. The night before the market, Elian stood in his workshop, surrounded by his creations. The golden veins gleamed in the lantern's glow, a testament to his journey. He was no longer the potter who chased perfection, but one who embraced imperfection as a source of beauty. Yet as he looked at his work, a new question stirred. Would the village see what he now saw? The answer lay just beyond the dawn, waiting to unfold.